A 5-year-old homeless girl approached a millionaire in Central Park and made an impossible promise: "I can make your son walk again." What seemed like the ravings of a desperate child would transform into the most extraordinary discovery of that man's life. A revelation that would change everything forever was about to surface. Subscribe to the channel for stories that touch the heart every day. The park was deserted that winter morning. Only the pale rays of the sun managed to pierce the dense clouds covering the city. The millionaire pushed his son's wheelchair with mechanical movements, his gloved hands gripping the chrome handles tightly. His footsteps echoed in the silence, creating a monotonous rhythm that seemed to cradle the melancholy he had carried for almost a year. The boy watched the world around him with large, curious eyes, but there was a deep sadness in that childish gaze. His thin legs rested immobile under a woolen blanket, and his pale little hands held a toy car that rarely left his grasp. It was one of the few objects that still sparked any interest in him, a reminder of the days when he ran through the mansion, filling every room with crystal laughter. The millionaire stopped next to a wooden bench and adjusted his son's blanket. With excessive care, his gestures were precise, calculated, as if each movement were a business operation. He had built an empire based on cutting-edge technology, dominating international markets with the same coldness that he now applied to the boy's daily care. But behind that facade of total control, his heart was shattered. "Daddy, why do people look at us that way?" the boy asked, his soft voice cutting through the cold morning air. The millionaire followed his son's gaze and noticed some people passing by, whispering to each other and casting looks of pity. He knew those expressions well. He had learned to identify them on the faces of doctors, employees, even distant relatives, who occasionally appeared with their empty words of comfort. "Don't worry about it," he replied, his voice sounding harsher than he intended. "People always have opinions about things they don't understand." The boy nodded, but continued to observe the movement around him. Since the accident, he had developed a keen perception of people's emotions. He could feel when someone felt pity, anger, or discomfort in his presence. It was a weight that no child should bear, but that had become part of his reality. The millionaire glanced at the diamond-encrusted watch on his wrist. They had only 15 more minutes before returning home, where video conference calls, financial reports, and the routine that kept his mind occupied awaited him. It was easier to immerse himself in work than to face the reality of his son's limitations and the painful absence of his wife. The mansion where they lived was a monument to success, with its opulent rooms, marble staircases, and perfectly manicured gardens. But since the accident, it had transformed into a gilded cage. The boy spent most of his days in his adapted room, surrounded by physical therapists, doctors, and nurses who came and went like silent shadows. The millionaire had spent fortunes looking for a cure. He consulted renowned specialists in New York, London, Zurich. He subjected his son to experimental exams, alternative therapies, exploratory surgeries. Each attempt failed, and with each failure, his faith in the possibility of recovery diminished a little more. "Daddy," the boy's voice brought him back to the present. "That girl is looking at us." The millionaire turned his head and saw a small, ragged figure approaching slowly. It was a child of approximately 5 years old, with tangled hair that looked like it hadn't seen a brush in weeks. Her clothing was a patchwork of mended scraps, and she carried a faded teddy bear against her chest. Her bare feet contrasted with the cold ground of the park. Instinctively, the millionaire positioned himself protectively behind his son's chair. He was used to beggars approaching when they saw him with the boy, exploiting the situation to elicit compassion. He had already developed a standard speech and always kept a few bills in his pocket to quickly get rid of these situations. But there was something different about that girl. She didn't hold out her hand, asking for alms, or assume the submissive posture typical of someone asking for help. Instead, she walked with a strange determination for someone so small, her eyes fixed on the boy in the wheelchair. When she finally stopped in front of them, the millionaire waited for the predictable words about hunger or need. Instead, she looked directly at him and spoke with a conviction that caught him completely off guard. "Sir, I can make your son walk again." The words came out of the girl's mouth with a disconcerting naturalness, as if she were commenting on the weather or asking the time. The millionaire stood still, processing what he had just heard. His first reaction was irritation. How dare that child play with the family's pain? The boy in the wheelchair leaned forward, interested. There was something in the girl's tone of voice that sounded different from the empty promises of adults. She spoke as if she really knew something that the others didn't. "How dare you?" the millionaire began, his voice laden with indignation. But the girl interrupted him with a simple gesture of her hand. "You don't believe me, I know." She came closer, completely ignoring the man's defensive posture. "But I feel things in people. I always have, since I was little." The millionaire observed the child's eyes. They were a deep brown, almost golden, and there was a seriousness in them that didn't match her age. There was no malice or manipulation. In her gaze, just an unwavering certainty that made him uncomfortable. "My name is," he began, but realized he didn't want to identify himself to a beggar. "I know who you are," she said calmly. "Everyone knows the man from the big companies, but that doesn't matter now." The girl knelt on the damp grass, getting to the boy's height in the chair. Her teddy bear lay on the ground next to her, like a silent guardian of the conversation that was about to happen. She said to the boy, her voice becoming softer. "Does it hurt a lot?" The boy looked at his father, asking permission to answer. The millionaire was torn between pushing the girl away immediately and letting his son have a moment of normal interaction with another child, something that rarely happened. "Sometimes," the boy replied timidly, "mostly when it's cold." The girl nodded understandingly. "I feel pain sometimes too, but I've found that when I close my eyes and think about good things, the pain goes away. Have you tried that?" It was a simple, childish conversation, but the millionaire noticed something extraordinary. His son was smiling, a genuine smile, not forced like the ones he offered to the doctors and visitors. It was the first time in months that he had seen him truly relaxed in the presence of a stranger. "How do you know you can help him?" the millionaire asked, his voice losing some of its initial aggression. The girl stood up and looked him directly in the eye. "Because I've helped other people. On my street there's a man who couldn't walk. Right because of a wound on his leg, I put my hand on him and he got better. There's a woman who always cried from headaches, and after I touched her, she stopped crying." "That's impossible," the millionaire murmured, but his voice no longer sounded so convinced. "To adults, many things seem impossible," she replied. "Simply, but kids know that the world has things we don't understand." The boy in the chair leaned even further forward. "Daddy, let her try." His son's question hit the millionaire like a punch to the gut. For months, he hadn't seen the boy show hope or enthusiasm for anything. The doctors had recommended not feeding unrealistic expectations, accepting the new reality and focusing on adaptation. But here was his son asking to try one more time. The millionaire looked around Central Park. Some people had stopped to watch the scene, whispering among themselves. He imagined the headlines that might emerge. "Millionaire consults. Child healer in public park." His reputation, built over decades, could be shaken by a moment of weakness. But when he looked again into his son's pleading eyes, all considerations about public image lost importance. "What exactly would you do?" he asked the girl, his voice almost a whisper. "Just put my hands on his legs and be quiet for a little." "While," she explained, "it doesn't hurt at all. It's like a gentle touch." The millionaire took a deep breath. The rational part of his mind screamed that this was ridiculous, a waste of time, potentially dangerous. But there was another part, one that had been desperate for almost a year, that whispered, "What if it's true?" "This is absurd," the millionaire muttered to himself, taking a few steps away from the girl. His hands trembled slightly as he took the phone from his coat pocket. "We need to leave, now." The boy in the wheelchair turned to look at his father, confusion plastered on his pale face. "But Daddy, why can't we try? She seems nice." "Because," the millionaire began, but the words died in his throat. How to explain to a child that the world was full of people who took advantage of others' vulnerability? How to say that hope was sometimes more cruel than resignation? The girl remained where she was, watching the internal struggle unfolding before her. She showed no hurry or despair, just an infinite patience that seemed strange in someone so young. "You're scared," she said calmly, her words cutting through the cold morning air like a sharp blade. The millionaire stopped in the middle of dialing a number. "Scared? I'm not afraid of anything." "You're afraid to believe again," she continued, her voice soft but firm, "because if it doesn't work, it's going to hurt a lot, and you've been hurting for a long time." The girl's words hit a deep place in his chest, a place he had carefully locked away after months of medical disappointments. It was true. Each failed treatment, each exam that confirmed the permanent paralysis, each look of pity from the specialists had created a protective crust around his heart. "You don't know anything about me," he replied, but his voice sounded weaker now. "I know you cry when you think no one is watching," she said, and the millionaire felt the blood freeze in his veins. "I know there are nights you lie awake looking at the ceiling, remembering what it was like before. I know you blame yourself." The phone slipped from his hands and fell to the grass with a thud. How could a street child know these things? They were secrets he guarded jealously, thoughts that tormented him in the silent early hours in the mansion. "Daddy?" The boy's voice was worried now. "Are you okay?" The millionaire turned to his son and saw the reflection of his own vulnerability in those childish eyes. For months he had tried to be strong, to be the unwavering pillar of the family. But the truth was that he was broken inside, just keeping up appearances through sheer willpower. "How can you know these things?" he asked the girl, his voice almost a whisper. "Because I've suffered a lot too," she replied, hugging the teddy bear against her chest. "And when you suffer a lot, you learn to see the suffering in others." The millionaire approached slowly, studying the child's face. There were marks there that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Small lines around her eyes that spoke of tears shed, an early maturity that came from the need to survive in a hostile world. "Where are your parents?" he asked. The shadow that passed over the girl's face was almost imperceptible, but he managed to catch it. "My mum, she left a long time ago. I don't have a dad." The boy in the wheelchair reached out his hand to the girl. "I'm so sorry, it must be really hard not to have a family." The girl smiled sadly. "Sometimes, but you find family in strange places, right?" The millionaire felt something move in his chest, an emotion he had tried to suppress for months. Compassion, not just for his own son, but for that unknown child, who spoke about family with a wisdom that hurt. "If I let you try," he said carefully, "I don't want you to raise false hopes in my son. He's already suffered too much." The girl nodded solemnly. "I don't promise miracles. I only promise to try the way I know how." The millionaire looked around Central Park again. The people who had been watching had lost interest and gone their way. It was just the three of them now, creating a bubble of possibility amidst the skepticism of the adult world. "Dad," the boy said softly, "remember when you used to tell me that sometimes the most important things come from the most unexpected places?" The millionaire closed his eyes. He remembered those conversations, the stories he told his son before. The accident, when he still believed that the world was a place where miracles could happen. "Okay," he said finally, his voice laden with resignation and perhaps a glimmer of hope. "But be very careful." The girl nodded respectfully and approached the wheelchair. Her movements were careful, almost reverent, as if she understood the magnitude of the moment. The millionaire positioned himself next to his son, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of discomfort. "It won't hurt at all," the girl said to the boy, her voice taking on a maternal tone that seemed impossible in someone so small. "It might even tickle, but good tickles." The boy laughed nervously. "It's been a long time since I've felt tickles in my legs. Maybe today's the day," she replied with serene confidence. The girl knelt on the cold, damp grass, not caring about the dirt, sticking to her already bruised knees. Her small hands, small and calloused from a hard life on the streets, hovered over the boy's immobile legs for a few moments. "Can I?" she asked, and the boy nodded. The first touch was as gentle as a butterfly. The girl placed the palms of her hands on the boy's knees, over the blanket, and closed her eyes. The millionaire watched attentively, expecting some sign of charlatanism, some theatrical staging. Instead, he saw only a focused child, breathing slowly and deeply. The silence that settled in was unlike anything the millionaire had ever experienced. It wasn't the heavy silence of doctors' offices or the artificial silence of hospitals. It was a living silence, charged with possibilities. "I feel something," the boy whispered, and the millionaire's heart raced. "What do you feel?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "It's like there's warm water running inside my legs." The girl remained still, her hands now moving slowly along the boy's legs. There were no magic words or elaborate rituals, just that gentle touch and the measured breathing of a child who seemed to be talking to invisible forces. The millionaire found himself holding his breath. For years he had been a staunch skeptic, someone who believed only in what could be measured, proven, documented. But there, in that moment, suspended in time, he felt confronted with something that defied all his rational certainties. "She's glowing," the boy murmured, and the millionaire frowned. "What do you mean, glowing?" "I can't explain it right. It's like there's a light coming out of her hands, but a light that only I can see." The millionaire looked more closely at the girl's hands. He didn't see any light, but there was something different in the way she touched his son. It was a touch laden with intention, with care, with an inexplicable love for a child she had met only a few minutes before. Gradually, the expression on the boy's face began to change. The tension he always carried in his shoulders seemed to lessen, and a gentle smile began to form on his lips. It was as if he was experiencing something he had forgotten existed. "How did you learn to do this?" the millionaire asked the girl, without interrupting whatever was happening. She opened her eyes slowly, but kept her hands in place. "I didn't learn. It's always been like this. Ever since I was little, when I saw someone suffering, my hands would get hot and I wanted to touch the person. In the beginning, the others thought I was weird. And now? Now they know I'm weird," she replied with an innocent smile. "But a weirdo who helps." The boy giggled, and the sound was like music to the millionaire's ears. It had been so long since he had heard his son laugh genuinely. "You know what's funnier?" the girl continued, focusing again on what she was doing. "People think I do magic, but it's not magic, it's just love, you know? When you really love, good things happen." The millionaire felt a lump form in his throat. When had been the last time he had loved someone without fear, without reservations, without the protection of the barriers he had built around his heart? "I'm feeling tingling," the boy announced suddenly, and the millionaire moved closer immediately. "Where?" "In my toes. It's weird, but it's good." The girl smiled without opening her eyes. "I told you it would tickle." For another 15 minutes, she kept her hands on the boy's legs. The millionaire watched every micro-expression on his son's face, looking for signs of improvement or, conversely, that he was being fooled by unfounded hopes. When the girl finally removed her hands and sat on the grass, she seemed exhausted. There was sweat on her forehead despite the cold, and she breathed as if she had run a long distance. "Done," she said simply. "And now?" the millionaire asked. "Now we wait. His body will need a little while to remember how to make his legs work." The boy moved his arms, trying to look at his own legs. "I still feel the tingling. It's different from anything I've ever felt before." The girl stood up with effort, picked up her teddy bear and hugged it. "I'm going now, but remember what I said. Don't give up, okay?" "Wait," the millionaire called, his voice laden with urgency. "How can I find you again?" She stopped and looked at him with those golden eyes that seemed to see through things. "If it's important, we'll find each other again." 3 days had passed since the encounter in the park, and the millionaire couldn't get the girl out of his thoughts. During business meetings, his mind wandered to those golden eyes and the serenity with which she had touched his son's legs. Even more disturbing was the fact that the boy had reported continuous tingling sensations, something the doctors couldn't explain. "Sir," his assistant's voice brought him back to the present of the meeting room. "The shareholders are waiting for your decision on the Asian expansion." The millionaire blinked, realizing he had completely lost the thread of the presentation. 12 men in suits watched him expectantly, waiting for the decisive leadership he had always demonstrated. Instead, all he could think about was the possibility that a street child might have some kind of genuine power. "We'll postpone the decision for a week," he said abruptly, rising from the table. "I need more data." Murmurs of surprise followed him as he left the room. In 30 years of his career, he had never postponed a decision for lack of certainty. But nothing in his life had seemed certain since that morning in the park. Arriving home, he found his son in the sunroom, watching the birds through the glass. The boy seemed more animated in recent days, with more color in his face and more interest in the things around him. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, sitting next to the wheelchair. "Different," the boy replied thoughtfully. "It's like something's waking up inside my legs. I can't explain it right." The millionaire watched his son closely. There was a new energy there, a vitality he hadn't seen since before the accident. It could be suggestion, it could be coincidence, but something had definitely changed. "Dad," the boy said softly, "do you think we'll see the girl again?" "I don't know." "Why?" "Because I dreamed about her last night. In the dream, she told me that it wasn't her who was healing me. She said that I was healing myself, and she was just reminding me how to do it." The millionaire felt a shiver run down his spine. "And what else did she say?" "That sometimes people get so used to pain that they forget what it's like to live without it, and that you needed to remember too." His son's words echoed in his mind for the rest of the day. During dinner, as he watched the boy eat with more appetite than he had shown in months, the millionaire wondered if he was witnessing the beginning of a miracle or simply the power of renewed hope. That night, after his son fell asleep, he found himself driving back to the park where they had met the girl. He didn't know exactly what he expected to find, but he felt an inexplicable need to return to that place. The park was empty and poorly lit, but he walked the same paths they had taken days before. When he reached the bench where it had all begun, he stopped and looked around, searching for any sign of the mysterious child. "She doesn't come here at night," a voice behind him said. The millionaire turned and saw an elderly man, seemingly homeless, watching him with curiosity. "Do you know the girl?" he asked. The man nodded. Little one with an old teddy bear. Everyone around here knows her. She's special, that one. Special how? Has healing hands. She's helped half the homeless folks in the area. Never asks for anything in return, just helps because she has a big heart. The millionaire felt his skepticism begin to crumble. Where does she live? Nowhere specific. Sleeps where she can find shelter, but she usually stays near the abandoned church on the other side of town. Without hesitating, the millionaire returned to his car and drove to the location indicated. The church was an old Gothic structure, abandoned for years, with broken stained glass windows and graffiti-covered walls. Around the building, he could see several people sleeping on cardboard and improvised blankets. He parked the car and walked carefully among the homeless, looking for the girl. Finally, he found her, huddled in a corner protected by a piece of tarp, sleeping with her teddy bear hugged against her chest. The sight of that child, who had offered hope to his son, sleeping in the open in the winter cold, awakened something primal in his chest. It was more than compassion. It was an urgent need to protect, to care for, to do something to change that unacceptable situation. He approached slowly and called her gently. "Little girl." She opened her eyes immediately, alert as someone accustomed to sleeping in dangerous places. When she recognized him, she smiled with genuine surprise. "Hi, how's the boy?" "Better, much better." He knelt beside her. "But I'm more worried about you now. You can't keep sleeping on the street like this." She shrugged. "I'm used to it, and here I help people when they need it. You're a child. You should be in a warm house, in a bed, going to school." Her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "I've never had those things. I don't even know what it's like." The millionaire felt his heart break. Here was a child with an extraordinary gift, living in conditions that no animal should endure, and yet still worried about helping others. "What if I could change that?" he asked impulsively. "How?" "Come with me. I have a big house with heated rooms and food always available. You could have everything a child should have." The girl studied him for a long moment, and in exchange, nothing, just keep being who you are. The girl watched the millionaire for long seconds, as if she were evaluating not only his words, but the sincerity behind them. Around them, other homeless people began to wake up with the sound of the voices, creating a silent audience for that unexpected conversation. "Why do you want to help me?" she asked finally. The millionaire hesitated. It was a simple question, but the answer was too complex to be explained easily. "Because you helped my son, and because no child should live like this." "Many children live like this," she replied, with a disturbing wisdom. "You never cared before." The observation was like a punch to the gut. It was true. For years, he had passed countless street children, always averting his gaze, always finding excuses not to get involved. What was different about this one? Before he could answer, one of the men sleeping nearby approached. It was the retired security guard who had occasionally done jobs for the millionaire's company years ago. "Boss?" the man said, recognizing him. "What are you doing here?" The millionaire looked at the former employee with surprise. The man was visibly aged, with worn clothes and obvious signs of a difficult life on the street. His memory quickly retrieved the name Roberto, who had worked as a security guard at his company for nearly a decade before being fired for problems with alcoholism. "Roberto," he said, rising slowly. "I didn't know you were living here." The man gave a bitter smile. "Life takes many turns, boss. But what a coincidence you appearing just when I was thinking about the past." The girl watched the interaction with interest, hugging her teddy bear tighter against her chest. There was something in the tension in the air that made her uneasy, as if she could feel old secrets moving in the shadows. "Do you know this girl?" Roberto asked, gesturing toward the child. "We just met," the millionaire replied, without mentioning the encounter in the park. Roberto knelt beside the girl, his face lighting up with genuine affection. "This one here is our little miracle worker. She takes care of everyone here in the neighborhood. She's really special." "Special how?" the millionaire asked, although he already had an idea of the answer. "She has magic hands. She's relieved so much pain from so many people here that we've lost count. And besides..." Roberto hesitated, looking at the girl with a careful expression. "She has an interesting story." The girl lowered her eyes, and the millionaire realized that there was something painful in that story that Roberto was about to tell. "What kind of story?" he insisted. Roberto looked around, making sure no one else was listening. "Her mother. She worked for wealthy people a few years back. Poor thing, she was a beautiful woman, but she suffered a lot. One day, she showed up here pregnant, desperate, saying that the child's father couldn't know about the pregnancy. The millionaire's heart began to race. There was something familiar about that story, something that stirred memories buried for years. "What was her name?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Helena," Roberto replied, and the world seemed to stop around the millionaire. Helena. The name echoed in his mind like a scream across time. Helena, the young woman who had worked as a personal assistant at his company 6 years ago. Helena, with whom he had lived a secret and intense romance for 3 months before his conscience and social pressures forced him to end the relationship. Helena, who had mysteriously disappeared from the city, leaving only a letter saying that she needed to start a new life. "It can't be," he murmured, looking at the girl with new eyes. The child raised her face to him, and for the first time, the millionaire really observed her features. The golden eyes, the shape of the nose, the delicate line of the jaw. How had he been blind not to see it before? There was the perfect combination of Helena's features with his own. "Where is Helena now?" he asked, his voice trembling. Roberto lowered his head. "She died when the girl was 2 years old. Pneumonia. She didn't have money for proper treatment." The revelation hit the millionaire like an emotional tsunami. Helena had died, alone, poor, caring for a daughter who was his. He looked at the girl, his daughter, who was watching him with an expression of understanding that went beyond her apparent age. "Did you know?" he asked her, his voice hoarse with emotion. The girl nodded slowly. "My mother told me before she died. She said that my father was a very important man, but that he couldn't be with us because he had another family." The millionaire felt physically sick. During all these years, his daughter had lived in misery while he built his empire, unaware of her existence. And now she had appeared in his life at the moment when he most needed hope, offering healing to the son he knew and accepted. "Why did you never look for me?" he asked. "My mother made me promise that I would never bother you," she replied simply. "She said that you already had enough problems." The tears that the millionaire had held back for years finally found their way to the surface. There was his daughter, living in deplorable conditions, protecting him from any inconvenience, even at the cost of her own suffering. "I didn't know," he whispered, extending his trembling hand toward her. "If I had known..." "I know," she said, taking his hand with her small, calloused hands. "That's why, when I saw you in the park, I knew I had to help. You and the boy, you're my family." Roberto watched the scene with growing understanding. "So it's true," he murmured. "The girl always said that one day she would find her father." The millionaire knelt completely on the cold grass, getting to his daughter's height. For the first time in years, all his defenses collapsed. There was the child he had lost without ever having had the chance to meet. The same child who had appeared like an angel to heal his known son. Would you like to come home with me?" he asked, his voice full of hope and fear. She studied him for a long moment. "What about the people here? Who will take care of them when they need it?" Even in that moment of emotional revelation, her first concern was still for others. The millionaire realized that he had created not only a daughter, but an extraordinarily generous soul. "We can find a way to continue helping them," he promised. "But you need a home, security, education. You need to be a child." The girl looked around at the people who had become her makeshift family. Several homeless people had approached, listening to parts of the conversation, and their faces showed a mixture of joy for the girl's opportunity and sadness for the imminent loss. "Go, little one," said an elderly woman who slept near the church. "You deserve to have a better life. We'll miss you, but we'll be happy knowing that you're okay." The girl turned to the millionaire, her golden eyes shining with unshed tears. "Can I take my teddy bear?" "You can take everything you want," he replied, his own voice choked with emotion. "And you can visit your friends whenever you want." When they finally got up to leave, the millionaire carrying his daughter's small bundle of belongings, Roberto pulled him aside. "Boss," he said in a low voice, "take good care of her. This girl is special in a way that few can understand. And after everything she's been through, she deserves all the happiness in the world." The millionaire nodded, holding the small hand of his newfound daughter. "I'll do everything to make up for the lost years." As they walked toward the car, the girl stopped and looked back one last time. "I won't forget you," she shouted to the homeless people who were waving goodbye. In the car, during the silent drive to the mansion, the millionaire could barely process the magnitude of the changes that had occurred in his life in a matter of days. He had gone out to help an abandoned child and discovered that she was his own daughter. He had sought healing for one son and found another. "How did you know?" he asked finally. "In the park. How did you know you could help?" The girl, now comfortably warmed in the heated seat of the car, hugged her teddy bear and smiled, because families take care of each other even when they don't know their family. The girl's arrival at the mansion created an uproar that the millionaire had not anticipated. The day after the revelation, his house was invaded by a procession of indignant people. Lawyers, members of the company's board of directors, distant relatives who rarely visited him, and even social workers, who had been alerted by concerned sources. The millionaire found his daughter hidden behind the marble staircase, watching the chaos through the ornate balusters. She had taken a bath and put on new clothes that he had rushed to buy, but she still carried the teddy bear as a protective shield. "Why are all these people shouting?" she asked when he approached. "Because they don't understand," he replied, sitting on the step next to her. "They think I've gone crazy. Have you gone crazy?" He considered the question seriously. Maybe he had gone crazy after all. In less than a week, he had allowed a strange child to touch his paralyzed son, discovered he had a daughter he never knew existed, and brought that daughter to live in his house without any proper legal process. "Maybe a little," he admitted, "but sometimes madness is the only sane response to an insane world." In the living room, the discussion had escalated into shouting. The company's lead attorney, a stern man named Dr. Carvalho, was trying to explain the legal implications of impulsively adopting a street child without proper documentation. "You don't understand the ramifications of this," Dr. Carvalho argued, gesturing dramatically. "The media is already sniffing around the story. Imagine the headlines: 'Millionaire kidnaps indigent child.' Your reputation, your company, everything could collapse." Across the room, the social worker assigned to the case, a middle-aged woman with a perpetually distrustful look, flipped through a notepad with obvious disapproval. "Mr. Mendonça," she said, using the last name the millionaire rarely heard. "At home, procedures exist for a reason. We can't simply allow children to be removed from their situations without due investigation and documentation. Situation? The millionaire exploded, rising from his chair. She was sleeping in the open in the middle of winter. What investigation needs to be done to determine that that's unacceptable? The child's legal status needs to be clarified. The social worker insisted. We have no birth certificate, medical history, educational documentation. For all we know, she may have family looking for her. The millionaire was about to reveal that he was the family when Dr. Carvalho interrupted him with another argument. And there are security concerns as well. You don't know this child's background. There may be behavioral issues, traumas, even contagious diseases. We can't put your legitimate son at risk. The word legitimate hit the millionaire like a slap in the face. His jaw tightened, and he took a threatening step toward the attorney. Watch your words, Carvalho. I'm just being practical, the attorney replied, backing away slightly. You have responsibilities to your company, your shareholders, your son. You can't throw it all away for an emotional impulse. At that moment, the boy in his wheelchair appeared in the doorway, pushed by his private nurse. His face was red with anger, an emotion he rarely displayed. "Stop talking about my sister like that," he shouted, his voice echoing through the high walls of the mansion. The silence that followed was absolute. All the adults turned to look at the boy, surprised both by the interruption and the statement. "How do you know she's your sister?" Dr. Carvalho asked, his voice taking on a condescending tone that irritated the millionaire even further. "Because I feel it," the boy replied with conviction. "Since she touched my legs, I know we're family. And you know what? My legs are getting better. Last night I was able to move my toes." The social worker made a quick note. "Children often fantasize when they're under emotional stress." "It's not fantasy," the boy shouted again. "I'll show you." To the shock of everyone present, the boy concentrated intensely and, slowly, managed to visibly move his toes inside his shoes. It was a small movement, almost imperceptible, but definitely real. Dr. Carvalho paled. That's impossible. The doctors said—" "The doctors were wrong," the millionaire said calmly, but his voice carried an authority that made everyone back down. "And you're wrong too. This girl is not leaving my house." The social worker straightened up, assuming a more official posture. "Sir, with all due respect, this isn't a decision you can make unilaterally. There are legal protocols." "Then follow the protocols," he replied coldly. "Do your exams, your investigations, your reports, but in the meantime she stays here, safe and cared for." "And if we find that the child's removal was illegal?" Dr. Carvalho threatened. The millionaire turned to face him with a look that had defeated competitors in countless negotiations. "Then you can start looking for a new job." The tension in the room was palpable when the girl finally came down the stairs, still hugging her teddy bear. She observed the hostile faces around her and walked directly to the millionaire, taking his hand. "If you want, I can go back to the street," she said calmly. "I don't want to cause trouble." The simplicity and generosity of the offer left everyone momentarily speechless. Here was a child who had grown up in misery, offering to return to that life to spare the man who was trying to help her from inconvenience. "You're not going anywhere," the millionaire said firmly, squeezing her hand. "This is your home now." Dr. Carvalho tried another approach. "At least consider a gradual transition. Keep the child in a temporary facility while the legal aspects are resolved." "No," the boy in the wheelchair said with a determination that surprised even his father. "She stays with us. We already lost Mom. We're not losing our family again." The girl looked at the boy with tears in her eyes, touched by the passionate defense. She approached the wheelchair and took her newfound brother's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. The social worker, realizing that she was losing ground, made one last attempt. "What if the situation becomes public? The media could turn this into a scandal. Do you want to expose the children to that kind of attention? The millionaire considered it. It was a valid concern. The media could be relentless, especially when it came to public figures in controversial situations. Then we'll have to be careful, he said finally, but I'm not abandoning my daughter for fear of gossip. The words, my daughter, echoed through the room like a confession. Several of those present exchanged glances, realizing that there was more to this story than had been revealed. Dr. Carvalho frowned. Daughter? Are you sure about that? The millionaire took a deep breath, knowing that the moment had come to reveal the complete truth. Yes, she's my biological daughter. I just found out. The revelation completely changed the dynamic of the discussion, but also raised new and complicated questions about paternity, legal responsibility, and the years of unintentional abandonment. The revelation of paternity caused a stunned silence in the room. The millionaire watched the expressions of those present change from hostility to confusion, then to a calculating curiosity that made him even more angry. Dr. Carvalho was the first to recover. Do you have proof of this paternity? I'll take a DNA test if necessary, the millionaire replied, but I don't need proof to recognize my own daughter. The social worker scribbled notes furiously. This significantly complicates the legal situation. If paternity is confirmed, there are questions about why the child was abandoned, about unpaid child support, about... I didn't know of her existence, the millionaire interrupted, his voice laden with pain and regret. If I had known, I never would have allowed her to live in those conditions. The girl squeezed his hand tighter, as if she could feel the suffering in his words. She looked at the adults around her with a serenity that contrasted sharply with their agitation. Can I say something? She asked, her voice small but clear. Everyone turned to her, surprised that a child wanted to participate in such a complex discussion. You're talking about me like I'm not here, she continued, with a dignity remarkable for her age. And you're talking about bad things that could happen, but you haven't asked what I want. The social worker leaned forward, assuming a gentler tone. Of course, honey. What do you want? I want to stay with my family, she replied simply. I want to help my brother get better, and I want you to stop shouting. The boy in the wheelchair smiled, and for the first time since the discussion had begun, the millionaire felt a moment of peace. I'll give you a week, he announced, addressing the lawyers and the social worker. Sort out all the necessary paperwork. Do whatever tests you want, but do it quickly and discreetly. And during that time, my daughter remains here under proper medical care and legal protection. Dr. Carvalho opened his mouth to protest, but the millionaire silenced him with a look. 1 week, Carvalho. Or you can explain to the shareholders why you lost the firm's most lucrative client because of prejudice against a 5-year-old child. One by one, the visitors began to leave, murmuring among themselves about DNA tests, legal processes, and public relations crisis management. The social worker was the last to go, pausing at the door to address a final comment to the millionaire. I genuinely hope this works out for you, she said, and her voice had lost its official tone. But caring for a child who has experienced trauma isn't easy. She's going to need a lot of support. When they were finally alone, the millionaire sat down heavily in his favorite armchair. The girl approached timidly, still holding her teddy bear. I'm sorry for causing so much trouble, she said. You haven't caused any trouble, he replied, opening his arms to her. Sometimes people are afraid of what they don't understand. She nestled in his arms, and he felt an emotion he hadn't experienced since his son had been born. The protective and unconditional love of a father. The boy approached with the wheelchair. Dad, can I tell you something amazing? Sure. Since she got here, I've been feeling more things in my legs. It's not just tingling now. Sometimes I feel like I can try to stand up." The millionaire looked at the daughter in his arms. "Did you do something?" She shook her head. "I didn't need to. Sometimes healing happens just from being around people we love." That night, after discreetly hiring the best family lawyers in the city and scheduling all the necessary exams, the millionaire found himself facing a situation he had never imagined. He was the father of 2 children who needed him in completely different ways. The girl had adapted to the house with an ease that surprised him. She explored each room with respectful curiosity, marveling at simple things like running hot water and soft beds. But what touched him most was her constant concern for her brother. "She can sleep in my room," the boy had suggested during dinner. "That way, if she has nightmares, I can help. And if I have nightmares, she can help me too," he had added. The millionaire had hesitated, worried about issues of propriety and trauma, but the simplicity of the love between the children convinced him. They installed an extra bed in the boy's room, and for the first time in almost a year, the mansion was filled with the sounds of children's laughter. During the first night, the millionaire went to check on the children before going to bed. He found them awake, whispering in the dark. "What are you talking about?" he asked softly. "She was telling me about the people on the street," the boy replied. "And I was telling her about when I could walk. And I was telling him that he's going to walk again," the girl added, "because I feel that he will." "How can you be so sure?" the millionaire asked, sitting on the edge of his son's bed. "Because love heals things that medicine can't," she replied, "and now we have a lot of love in this house." 3 days later, during a routine physical therapy session, something happened that left everyone stunned. The physical therapist was working on the mobility of the boy's legs when suddenly the boy was able to flex his left knee. "Did you do that on purpose?" the physical therapist asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "I think so," the boy replied, concentrating intently. Slowly, he managed to repeat the movement. The girl, who was watching from the chair next to him, smiled as if she had been waiting for it. "I told you it was going to happen." The millionaire immediately called the doctors who had treated his son since the accident. The exams were inconclusive. There was no medical explanation for the sudden improvement, but the progress was undeniable. Sometimes, the lead neurologist admitted reluctantly, the body surprises us all. Maybe there was more preserved function than the initial exams indicated. But the millionaire knew that there was more than medicine involved in his son's recovery. There was hope, there was love, and there was an extraordinary girl who brought healing just by existing. A week after the girl's arrival, the mansion had transformed. The hallways that once echoed only with lonely footsteps now resonated with lively conversations between siblings. The millionaire found himself smiling for no apparent reason, just from the pleasure of hearing laughter coming from upstairs. The results of the DNA tests arrived on a rainy Thursday morning. The millionaire opened them alone in his office, although he already knew what he would find: 99.9% compatibility. There was the scientific confirmation of what his heart had already recognized. The girl was truly his daughter. He went upstairs to find the children in the room, where the girl was helping her brother with physical therapy exercises. It was a touching scene. She held his legs gently while he tried to move them, offering constant encouragement. "Do you feel anything now?" she asked patiently. "A little," he replied, focused. "It's like something's waking up in there." The millionaire watched for a few minutes before joining them. "I have news," he announced, showing the papers. The girl looked at him expectantly, although she didn't seem surprised by the result. "We're officially father and daughter," he said, kneeling beside her, "and that means you never have to worry about having a home or a family again." "I already knew that," she replied calmly, "but I'm glad that everyone knows it now too." The boy clapped his hands happily. Now it's official. We're really siblings. That afternoon, Dr. Carvalho returned with a stack of legal documents to be signed. His attitude had changed dramatically since the confirmation of paternity. Now, he treated the situation as a family reunion instead of an impulsive adoption. "Everything is in order," he announced with professional satisfaction. "The birth documentation has been reconstituted. The guardianship processes are complete, and we've established a trust fund to ensure the girl's future." The social worker also returned, but this time with a positive report. "The child's adaptation has been remarkable," she admitted. "We rarely see such a smooth transition from a situation of vulnerability to a stable family environment. And the progress of both children has been extraordinary," added the pediatrician, who had begun to monitor the girl. "Physically, she is recovering quickly from malnutrition and the effects of life on the streets. Emotionally, she demonstrates impressive resilience, but it was the neurologist's report on the boy that really surprised everyone. In 30 years of practice, I've never seen a recovery like this," he confessed to the millionaire. "What started as small reflex movements has evolved into genuine motor control. Yesterday, he was able to move both legs voluntarily, and this morning—" The doctor paused, as if he didn't believe what he was about to say. "This morning he was able to feel pressure on his feet, complete tactile sensation. According to all the laws of medicine, that should be impossible." The millionaire looked at his daughter, who was playing quietly with her teddy bear in the corner of the room. She had heard the adults' conversation, but didn't seem surprised. For her, miracles were simply part of everyday life. "Is there any scientific explanation?" he asked. The neurologist shook his head. "None that I can offer. Sometimes we call it spontaneous recovery, but it's just a fancy way of saying that we don't know what happened." That night, after the children went to bed, the millionaire found himself in the sunroom, contemplating the changes in his life. In less than 2 weeks, he had gone from a lonely and desperate man to the father of 2 extraordinary children. "Dad?" The girl's voice brought him back to the present. She was in the doorway, barefoot and in pajamas. "Can't you sleep?" "I could, but I woke up because I felt that you were sad." He smiled, still getting used to his daughter's supernatural intuition. "I'm not sad, just thinking." "About what?" "About how my life has changed. About how you two saved me in a way that I didn't even know I needed to be saved." She approached and climbed into his lap, nestling against his chest. "That's how families work. We save each other." "Where did you learn to be so wise?" "On the street," she replied simply. "When you have nothing, you learn to see what really matters." They were silent for a few minutes, father and daughter reunited after years of involuntary separation. "Can I tell you a secret?" she asked finally. "Sure." "I knew I was going to find you," she whispered, her golden eyes shining in the dim light of the garden. "Ever since I was little, I dreamed of a big house, with a daddy who cried in secret and a boy who needed help to walk. My mother said they were just dreams, but I knew that one day they would become real." The millionaire felt a shiver run down his spine. "You dreamed about us?" "Every night. And in the dream, I always managed to make the boy walk again. That's why I was so sure in the park. It wasn't magic, it was destiny." Silent tears streamed down the millionaire's face. For years he had believed that life was made only of coincidences and logical choices. But there was his daughter, talking about prophetic dreams and intertwined destinies, with the naturalness of someone who had always known that some things transcend rational explanation. "And now?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. "What do you dream about now?" She smiled, that innocent smile that had won his heart from the first moment. "Now I dream that we're happy forever, that the boy will run through the garden, that you will smile every day, and that our family will never be separated again." "That's not a dream," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. "It's a promise." 2 days later, the miracle that everyone was waiting for finally happened. During the morning physical therapy, the boy was able to support his body weight on his legs for almost 10 seconds. The physical therapist was so moved that he had to leave the room to compose himself. The girl was present, as always, offering moral support and holding her brother's hand during the exercises. When he managed to stand, she showed no surprise, just a deep joy and a serene satisfaction, as if she were watching the fulfillment of a prophecy that she had always known would come true. "I did it!" the boy shouted, his legs trembling with the effort, but firm. "Dad, look, I'm standing!" The millionaire was at the door, watching the scene with tears in his eyes. In a matter of seconds, he was beside his children, embracing them with a force that spoke of years of pain, transformed into joy. "I knew it," the girl said calmly, still holding her brother's hand. "You were always strong. You just needed to remember." That night, the three of them had dinner together for the first time, with the boy sitting in a regular chair, not the wheelchair. It was a silent but deeply meaningful milestone. The family had found its wholeness, its healing, its redemption. 6 months later, the mansion had completely transformed. Where once reigned the melancholic silence of a house marked by tragedy, now echoed sounds of full life, morning laughter, lively conversations during meals, footsteps running through the hallways. Yes, the boy had not only walked again, but ran with the recovered energy of a childhood that had been interrupted by pain. The millionaire was in his office, reviewing the company's quarterly reports, when he heard voices coming from the garden. Through the window, he saw his children playing on the grass. The boy chased his sister in a game of tag, both laughing. Loudly under the golden afternoon sun, the boy's transformation had been remarkable not only physically, but emotionally. The paralysis had stolen more than his movements. It had taken away his confidence, his natural joy, his ability to dream about the future. Now, at 10 years old, he ran, jumped, and more importantly, smiled with the spontaneity of someone who had rediscovered the magic of being a child. The girl, in turn, had blossomed in ways that constantly surprised the millionaire. Enrolled in an elite private school, she demonstrated a brilliant intelligence and a learning ability that impressed the teachers. But it was her emotional wisdom that really set her apart. She continued to be the child who comforted classmates in distress, who noticed when someone was sad and offered help without expecting anything in return. "Sir," the voice of the new personal assistant brought him back to the present. It was a young and efficient woman who had replaced the entire previous team. The millionaire had fired any employee who had shown prejudice against his daughter during those tumultuous early days. "The press is outside again," she informed. "They want an interview about your son's miraculous recovery and your family redemption story." The millionaire sighed. The media had discovered the story a few weeks ago, and since then they hadn't stopped trying to turn his family into a public spectacle. The headlines ranged from "The Miracle of the Street Girl" to "Millionaire Finds Lost Daughter and Son Recovers Movement." "Tell them the same as always," he replied. "Our family is not available for comment. This is a private matter." The assistant nodded and left, but he knew the reporters would be back. They always came back. Society had an insatiable hunger for stories that defied logic, that offered hope in an often cruel world. But for the millionaire, this wasn't a story for public consumption. It was his life, his family, his personal miracle, and he had learned to fiercely protect what he loved most. A soft knock on the door interrupted him. The girl entered, still, breathless from the game in the garden, her golden hair, now always clean and well-groomed, loose in the wind. "Dad," she said, naturally using the word that had taken weeks to come out of her lips in the early days. "Can you come play with us? The boy wants you to see how high he can jump now." The millionaire smiled, saving the document on the computer. 6 months ago, this scene would have been unthinkable. Him, a compulsive workaholic, abandoning important reports to play in the garden. But the girl had taught the whole family that some things were more important than spreadsheets and meetings. "Sure," he replied, getting up. "But first, I need to tell you something." She approached, curious. During the months of living together, she had developed the habit of noticing when he had something important to say. "Remember the church where you used to live?" he asked, "and the people who took care of you?" Her eyes lit up. Although she was completely adapted to her new life, she often asked about her old friends from the street. "Of course I remember." "Why?" "Because I bought the land next to the church, and I'm building a shelter for the homeless. It will have heated rooms, a community kitchen, medical and psychological care." And he paused dramatically. "A special space where a certain special girl can continue helping people if she wants." The girl's face lit up with a joy so pure that it made the millionaire's heart race. She jumped into his arms, hugging him tightly. "Really? We're going to be able to help everyone?" "We're going to be able to help everyone," he confirmed. "And you know what's the best part? Your brother wants to help too. He said that now that he can walk, he wants to teach other boys never to give up." Tears of happiness streamed down the girl's face. There was the confirmation that her new life didn't mean forgetting where she came from, but using her blessings to bless others. "Dad," she said, her voice choked with emotion, "thank you for believing in me that day in the park." "Thank you," he replied, his own voice failing, "for teaching me that miracles exist when we have the courage to believe in them." They went down together to the garden, where the boy was waiting for them with a radiant smile. That afternoon, the three of them played until sunset, creating memories that would forever replace the painful memories of the past. When they finally went inside, tired but happy, the millionaire had a moment of profound gratitude. He looked at his children, his 2 children, so different in their origins, but united by love and the shared experience of healing, and realized that he had found something that all the money in the world couldn't buy: a true family. That night during dinner, the girl made a solemn announcement. "I've stopped having those dreams," she said, carefully cutting the piece of cake that the millionaire had learned to make, one of the many new skills he had developed to connect with. His children, "What dreams?" her brother asked. "The dreams about finding a family. Now I dream about other things." "About what?" the millionaire asked, curious. She smiled, that smile that had changed their lives forever. "I dream that one day there won't be any more children sleeping on the street. I dream that all broken families will heal, like ours healed. And I dream that love will always conquer fear." The millionaire and the boy exchanged glances, knowing that those new dreams of the girl, just like the previous ones, would probably come true. Because they had learned that some people are born with the special gift of turning dreams into miracles. And as the family prepared for sleep that night, in a house that now pulsed with life and love, each of them knew they had found exactly where they belonged. The millionaire had found the purpose that had always been missing in his life of empty successes. The boy had recovered not only the movement of his legs, but faith in the future, and the girl had discovered that home wasn't a place, but the people we love and who love us back. Outside, the city continued to spin with its problems and solutions, its tragedies and triumphs. But inside that mansion, 3 people whom fate had separated and then reunited slept peacefully, knowing that some miracles are real, that some families are chosen by the heart, and that true love always finds its way home. And if anyone were to ask the millionaire what the best investment of his life had been, he wouldn't hesitate to answer, the moment he decided to believe in the impossible promise of a homeless girl who approached him in an empty park and changed everything forever. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day. Comment below and share this story with someone special.